Are you struggling to keep your electric bill in check? In this video, I'm going to give you 7 tips for saving money on your electric bill. Along the way, I'm going to share some fascinating information about electricity itself, and stick around to the very end where I have some fascinating electricity-related trivia. Welcome, I'm Amy, and here at Frugal Over 50, I give you tips and tools for frugal living, all personally tested by me. If you like this kind of content, I hope that you will subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll get notified first every time I upload a new video, which is usually about every week. All right, let's get right to our first tip. Tip number 1. Know where and how your electricity is made. Now, this may be something that's very obvious to you, particularly if you're one of those people who has electricity on the top of your roof through a set of solar panels, and you know exactly where your electricity comes from. But many of us just sort of plug stuff in and turn stuff on, and we don't really know where our electricity is made and how it is made. For instance, in my community, we don't have a grid that we're hooked into, but you might have one. I live on an island, so a grid would not be possible. But if you live on a large landmass, there may be a large electrical grid that your community is plugged into. And it may be that your electricity is made in several different ways. It may be made by coal, by oil, by sun, by wind, all kinds of things, even in some parts of the world by nuclear power. Now, where I live, all of our electricity is made with oil. So we think of electricity as clean, but it may or may not be. I've also learned that my own electric company is working toward becoming a green company over the next couple of decades. So right now we are where we are, but they also have plans moving forward. This is important because you need to know how far away does your electricity come from, and also how large of a grid are you plugged into, because that one bit of news will tell you a lot about how much your electricity costs. For instance, my electric bill tends to go up and down depending on worldwide oil prices. Yours may go up and down depending on worldwide coal prices, or how much wind there was that day, or you just don't know. But you should know. Find out how your electricity is made and where it is made and how far it's likely to travel before it gets to your house. Moving on to tip number 2. Get very, very friendly with your electric bill. I know it can be scary, especially if you're in a situation where you're kind of terrified and wanting to save money. It can be hard to look at that bill. Your electric bill gives you lots and lots of information. It will tell you what your bill is for that particular period, whether it be a month or a quarter or however long it is. It will also tell you how many kilowatt hours you used in that period, if your bill looks like mine, which I suspect it does. They're probably pretty uniform. And it will also give you a comparison of how you did over the past several months and how you did a year ago at the same time. This can give you an idea of trends, and that can be a particularly useful thing. For instance, let me give you an instance from this past December. This past December, my electric bill skyrocketed. And when I looked back at the previous December, I was like, why did it go up so much? And then I realized I have an electric oven, and in the month of December, I baked all of the gifts that I was going to give to extended family members. In fact, we traveled. Do y'all remember traveling? It was great, wasn't it? And I literally carried a suitcase full of Christmas bread to my family members where we traveled. And I traveled a really long way. So I came by that higher electric bill honestly. I earned it. I baked. And that's really where my Christmas gift budget went, was to my electric bill. And you can notice trends like that when you look carefully at your electric bill. You can also see where the price per kilowatt hour has gone up and down depending on your particular electric company's power source behind the electricity. The source that makes the electricity happen so you can have power in your home. So you can find trends in your own lifestyle. You can find trends in the price of energy that is used to make the electricity that comes to you. And you can find other things like, is there a question mark? Have you suddenly seen an electric bill go up and you're not entirely sure why? The other thing you can tell, I know that some of you live in parts of the country where your electric bill is sort of averaged out over a year, because some months you pay more and some months you pay less because your weather changes. I live on a tropical island. My weather never changes, so I don't know what that's like, but I've heard about it, and I know that you can then look back over the year and look back over the previous year and get a sense of what your electric consumption has done over the past year, what it's doing this year, and what your next year's monthly average is likely to be once that is reconfigured. And make sure that you take time to do that, even though it might seem a little bit fiddly, because you don't want to be surprised, especially if you're in a place where you can count on a steady amount for electricity every month. That would be nice. I don't have that. Mine changes every single month. But you want to know what's coming the next time your electric bill is averaged. So make sure to make friends with your electric bill. It is not your enemy. I promise you, your electric bill wants to help you. It wants to give you information that you need in order to save money on your electricity. Now, it's time for your first bit of fascinating electricity information. There is a kind of current that is called DC, or direct current, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It takes electricity from this point to this point in a straight line. It was first produced in 1800, and around the 1850s to 1870s it started to be used, and it was the first kind of electricity that was used in people's homes. It's not the kind that we use now. It tends to be used in situations where you need a lot of power to go directly from one place to another with very few stops in between. Those of you who know more about electricity than I do are probably going, oh my gosh, there's so much more to it than that. And you would be right. There's a lot that I don't understand about direct current. But if you think about it as the thing that charges a battery, or the thing that gets electricity through undersea cables, or the thing that helps smelting aluminum, those kinds of things where you need lots of power directly, that's what direct current tends to be used for in this day and age. So you may have some uses for direct current in your life, but it's probably not in your home. All right, now let's move on to tip number 3. Tip number 3 is a shout out to all of you mamas who spent your children's entire life going, turn off the lights when you leave the room. That's the tip. Turn off the lights when you leave the room. You've been telling it to everybody forever, or if you're the person who leaves the lights on, you've heard it shouted at you for decades. Well, guess what? It's timeless because it's true. Turn out the lights that you are not using. Now, in this day and age, for those of us who are Gen Xers and some of you who are baby boomers who have joined in on this channel, you're probably remembering when that would make a huge and significant difference in our electric bill. We all used incandescent bulbs in our homes, right? And now I don't think anybody really has too many incandescent bulbs left. They just aren't a thing. They're sort of hard to find. I may have a couple in my house. I don't know. Do you have any incandescent bulbs left in your house? If you're using the more modern bulbs, there are a couple of different varieties that use much less electricity. You might think, well, why do I have to turn out the lights? That doesn't use nearly as much as the incandescent stuff that you could just watch your electric meter ticking over while the lights were on. No, it's true. These new light bulbs don't use nearly as much as the ones that we all grew up with, but still, it's a good habit to not use any electricity that you don't have to. If you're not in the room, do you really need the light? Well, maybe you do, because maybe it's dark back there, it's nighttime, and you need something to see by other than your phone flashlight. Fine, but be judicious about using lights. So if you were always the person in your household to tell everybody to turn off the lights, I'm going to give you a gold star right now. There it is. There's your gold star. Enjoy it. Tip number 4 is another common sense one, like turning off the lights, and that is unplugging devices that are electrical that you don't use all of the time. Now, this is tricky for those of us who run households, especially if we run households with lots of people in them, because you might have seen this instruction many times before and wondered, how on earth will I put this into practice? And here's what I suggest. I suggest that you take some time to walk around your house and look and see what is plugged in, what has stayed plugged in, and decide right there on the spot as you're walking through, what are you going to leave plugged in and what are you going to unplug in between uses. So for instance, I have a toaster and a toaster oven and a coffee maker, and they sit right next to each other on the counter. I don't leave those plugged in, because I don't need to. They're easy to plug in and unplug and all of that business. And they just don't stay plugged in. On the other hand, I have a microwave that stays plugged in all the time. I could unplug it. There's the plug. But it doesn't make sense to me because I never know when I'm going to be using it. I use the microwave more than just about any appliance in my house other than the stove itself, which also stays plugged in, and I can't get to it to unplug it even if I wanted to. So you have to sort of be judicious about how you're going to plug and unplug. I don't ever unplug or turn off the power strip that drives my internet because I would feel like I was living in 1988 again, and we're not in 1988. I want to be in the year that I'm in right now. So you need to make those kinds of decisions and kind of own them and recognize, okay, this is going to stay plugged in, so it's always going to be using a little bit of electricity. Fine, I'm good with that. This, I don't want it draining electricity. I'm going to leave it unplugged. And similarly, if you notice that you have decided to unplug something and all the people in your household are leaving it plugged in, you also get to shout at them about that. Unplug the toaster oven! Turn off the lights when you leave the room! Yes, you get to be that person. These are common sense tips that we have all been practicing for a while, and I don't want to highlight them thinking that you aren't practicing them, but because I want you to review your current needs in your household. If you have fewer people or more people or a different kind of living space than you had before, look carefully at what are the lights. If you have any incandescent bulbs, for goodness sakes, get rid of them and change them out if you can, if at all possible. And second of all, look at what's plugged in, and do you need it plugged in all the time, or can you unplug it? And make those decisions carefully and make them currently. Currently. Our next bit of electricity trivia comes from AC, alternating current. Alternating current is not so much the direct straight from point A to point B. It can alternate in strength, I guess we would say. I think people who are into electricity will say, that's not the word! And I'm sorry. It's the only word that I can use to describe it. You can have less or more strength of electricity. And that is the kind of current that we have in our house. When you do plug in that toaster to make your toast or your bagel, you're using alternating current. It was produced first in the 1830s, and it started being used again in the 1870s, just about the same time direct current started being used. But over a fairly short period of time, it was discovered to be much better for use in homes. And so it is the most common type of electrical current that you will encounter. Hopefully not directly yourself, directly. So when you plug in your toaster, when you plug in your microwave, when you plug in your internet, you're plugging into alternating current. Tip number 5 is one of my favorite tips that I haven't tried yet. And if you have tried this one, I do want to hear from you about how it went. You can get a product called a kilowatt. And a kilowatt is a machine that you plug into your device that you want to test how much electricity it's using up in your home, and then you plug it into the wall, and it will read out. So like I want to find out how much energy my refrigerator is using. So I plug it into the kilowatt, and then I plug that into the wall. And then over a period of time, I can see how much electricity my refrigerator is using. Then I can go and plug in the washer and the dryer and the stove and the microwave and all of the big sorts of appliances. And I can see how much these big things that tend to be plugged in all of the time are using. And I can see, oh, this is where most of my electricity drain is going. This is where I want your expertise to chime in. Talk to me down below in the comments. Have you used a kilowatt? Was it helpful to you? Now, if you are like me and you haven't used a kilowatt, you can also do a little bit of a test on things not the refrigerator and freezer. Don't be unplugging it and plugging it in for a month to see how you do. But try out something like using your dryer less and see what that does to your electric bill. In my house, just with a sort of quick and dirty trying stuff out method, I noticed that my stove, my oven, and my dryer use the most electricity. They just eat it up. So if I'm going to be doing a lot of baking, for instance, next December, I'm just going to budget ahead for a much higher electric bill. When it comes to the dryer, that's a bit tricky. I live in a very tropical, very humid climate, and I'm not particularly tied to the idea of letting my clothes mildew gently on the line as they're attempting to dry while it rains again. So I do use my dryer, but I only use it about half as much as I used to before discovering how much electricity my dryer was eating up. And I have a drying rack and some hangers, and I do what I can to really minimize my drying budget. And that has made a significant difference on my electric bill. Another thing that I discovered is that my ice maker eats up my electric bill. I mean, hugely. I saw at one point a $40 a month increase in my electric bill, and I was so shocked I had the electric company come out to see if my meter was working. And it was working just fine. It was the dang ice maker. I've stopped using the ice maker, and now we just make ice, the old-fashioned way with the little trays of cubes. and the electric bill has come down. I was so shocked by this little bit of electricity news that I actually made a video about it a while ago, and some people said they were watching it and they paused the video to go turn off their ice makers. It's possible I just have a dud refrigerator, but if you do a little Googling, you'll discover that I'm not the only one to say this. Ice makers chew up a whole lot of electricity. If you are a fan of your ice maker, then you just need to know you're paying for it. If you aren't a fan of your ice maker, try turning it off and see what it does to your electric bill. Now, tip number 6 follows up from tip number 5 quite directly. Once you've analyzed and identified which appliances seem to be using the most electricity, you might determine, do you really want to keep them? Do you really need to use that appliance? Do you really need to have that appliance? And I'm thinking here not so much about things like washers, dryers, stoves, refrigerators, which tend to be standard in American homes at least. But think about, for instance, that second refrigerator in the garage. Do you still have enough of a need for a second refrigerator that you need to keep that out there? If you raised teenagers, especially the teenage boy type people, you may have wanted a second, third, and fourth refrigerator for a few years there. But if they're gone from the home, do you really need it? Could you make do with just a small chest freezer, for instance, which uses quite a bit less electricity? Second appliances are an easy one to just sort of ditch. And then you want to look at how old your appliances are. If you've lived in your place for a while, you may have appliances that aren't Energy Star rated even now because they have lasted all this time and you're very proud of yourself for being frugal, and yay you. But on the other hand, think about it in terms of your savings in electricity. Would you be better served by getting a more modern, more up-to-date, more energy-saving appliance? And this is a tough call, because I know some of you have had your washing machine since the 1980s or even the 1970s, and they work great, but they use a ton of water, they use a ton of electricity, but you don't want to get rid of them because what you've heard is that nowadays appliances are built to last 8 to 10 years, and that would be true. On the other hand, if it's killing you electricity-wise, it might be worth doing. So I'm going to leave that to you to determine, but I do want to ask you to look honestly at each of, especially the large appliances in your home, and think about where are they in energy rating, and could you do better, and how would you save up money so that you can over time get your appliance updated without going into debt. Because this video is all about saving money, I don't really want you to get rid of that 1978 washing machine. I want you to save up over time for an Energy Star rated washing machine. Do you see what I mean? And we finally come to tip number 7. Now, if you are still here, thank you so much. Please like this video if you like this kind of content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Hit that notification bell because I put out videos just like this every week, and I would love to have you along for the ride. Tip number 7 is all about your house and where your house is. This is where you start thinking about the big stuff. When was the last time you considered the insulation in your walls or in your windows or in your attic? I don't have insulation, so I don't know what that's like, but I know that most of you need to think about that. When was the last time you looked at what direction your house mostly faces? Do you get light from the south? If you're in the northern hemisphere, you want to make sure that to keep your house warm when it's cold, you have some south-facing windows. This is what I am told. I don't know. I live very southern, so we just get light all the time. Some of this stuff I am not speaking out of personal experience, and I'm sorry about that. I do hope to live in a place where I can experience 4 seasons someday, but that's not really my reality. But if it is yours, you do need to think about how your house was constructed, what direction it faces, where you need insulation, and this is another place where a walkthrough can really help. If it's cold outside or if it's hot outside, where are those windows and all kinds of other things, windows, doors, and other pesky cracks, letting in air, letting out air that shouldn't be. And the other thing you want to think about is how much of the year can you actually go with open windows? And in those times, do you have what we in the tropics like to call cross ventilation, where you get breeze throughout your house? That's a wonderful thing to have. And if your home is built to allow for cross ventilation, it gives you much more chance to have lots of good air going through your house whenever the weather permits. Now leads to another thing. Where is your house? You've already, way back in tip number 1, investigated where your electricity comes from and how it gets to your house, how far it travels to your house. Now think about where your house is and think about, does this affect your electric bills because of how and where your electricity is made and how it gets to you? Does it affect your electric bills because of where you live and you have to use electric appliances to heat or cool your home for so much of the year? And the way your house is built, you can't take advantage of fresh air for very much of the year. Think about all of these really tough questions, especially if you're a mature woman. You may be wondering if it's time to downsize. And when you're thinking about downsizing, make sure that you think about your electric bill and the kind of house you have, how tightly it's insulated if that's needed, how openly it's built for cross ventilation if that's needed, and what part of the country it's in, what part of the world it's in, so that you get the best deal on your electricity. Now, this is a tough one. It's a huge, wide-ranging subject. But mature women, my sisters, and anybody else who's thinking about electric bills and downsizing and moving into a more economical and more frugal way of life, you definitely want to look honestly at the whole thing. Do I just need to move? A different house in the same neighborhood, a different part of town, a different part of the state, a different part of the country, a different part of the world? And what's possible given your family situation, given your health, given your job situation? What is possible? And look honestly at what you might want to do, because you can only turn out so many lights. You can only update so many appliances. And if you're then still living in a place that is just never going to do anything other than eat up your electric bill, and there's nothing you can do about it, it might be time to move. Now, if that excites you, then look at it that way. If it doesn't excite you, then go back to these other tips. In fact, rewatch this video as many times as you need. Take notes. There won't be an exam. I am a teacher, but I won't give you an exam, I promise. Use what is helpful to you and make all of the small and medium and largish size tweaks that you can in the space where you live. Now, I promised you a fascinating bit of electricity-related trivia, and this is great for all of you Gen Xers and Boomers out there who love rock and roll. The band AC/DC got their name from alternating current / direct current, or if you're a fan of the band, you know it's AC lightning bolt DC. And there are 3 urban legends about how they got their name. The Young family was originally from Scotland, and in the winter of 1963, it was so cold in Scotland that they called it the Big Freeze, and they offered for anybody in Scotland who was too cold to move to Australia. And the Young family did exactly what I talked to you about in tip number 7. They moved from Scotland and those freezing cold winters to Australia. Now, once they got to Australia, that's where all the kids grew up, and 2 of the brothers decided to start a band, and they needed a name. Now, there are 3 urban legends about how AC/DC got their name. 2 of these revolve around their sister Margaret. Apparently, in one, she had a sewing machine, and on the back of the sewing machine was a label that said AC/DC, as many household appliances said in the 1960s and 70s. And they decided, this is great. We are raw electric energy. We're going to use this as our band name. Now, the other thing is that Margaret suggested this just because she saw it on a random sewing machine. And the other is that they saw it on a vacuum cleaner. Well, one way or another, they named their band after a household appliance label assisted by their sister. And I think that is fascinating and lovely because AC/DC is known for being this sort of powerhouse, rock and roll, big stadium band. But their band is named after a household appliance, and we don't even know which one. And their sister helped them. I think it's adorable. All right, thank you so much for being here. Wherever you are on your frugal journey, wherever you are on your electricity saving journey, I want you to know that I am so proud of you, and you are not alone. I am here with you, and we have a growing community of like-minded people. Please tell me who you are in the comments, and tell me what you've done today to save money on your electricity bill. And if this video has helped you, I really hope that it has. Please give this video a like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you get notified first of new videos. I can't wait to see you again soon. Bye-bye.